guys, welcome back to the Other Girls Club podcast. I have a guest here with me today and I'm so excited that he is here. It is David Larbi. David Larbi is a poet, the host of the viral Mindful Moments podcast, author of Frequently Happy and the living embodiment of sunshine. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me. That's the nicest introduction ever.
I asked him before, I was like, is this intro okay? Do you want anything out? And he was like, you called me sunshine. He was like, I'm fine with that. I don't know. I don't think I've ever told you this story, but it's really funny. So I've got to tell you now that we are here on the podcast. There was a time period where we had never met before in person, but we knew each other online. And it was that kind of awkward online friend moment where we knew of each other, we'd spoken, and this was the first time we were meeting in person. It was this really big event. It was a premiere, like around Christmas time a few years ago. And we kind of like awkwardly, I think, or like on the carpet, we're just like, oh, hi, yeah, I know you. Oh, yeah, hi, it's you. Oh, okay, you've gone. It's too quickly. It's one of those like events, you just like, everyone comes and goes so quickly. And then later on, really later on in the night, we're all sitting at the bar after the film. You were behind me with a big group of friends. And because I just cannot cut out any noise in any environment that I'm in, I can hear everything that's going on in the room. I just all of a sudden heard your voice go, yeah, and they have their own language that they speak with the dragons. And then you were like, I can't remember what it's called. And so all of your friends are talking about House of Dragon. And I was sat there with my friend and I was like, oh, he's talking about House of Dragon. And you're like, oh, can I join? Would that be weird? I don't know. And I'm sitting there going, it's Valerian. And it's so funny because the whole time we've been friends, I've had that story in the back of my head and thinking, he has no idea this.
You've never and I really wish you turned around and said
like, it's Valerian, by the way.
Because you know those conversations where it's on the tip of your tongue and you know I'm gonna go away later and know exactly what I should have said.
Yeah.
It was and also it was undermining my status in that group because it's like I am a huge fan of this show, and right now I don't look like a huge fan, but I know what this is. I know what this is.
You didn't know the language, David.
Next time, feel free to save me because
I will do.
I needed
like,
that.
By the way, I know the facts about that. Something I ask everyone who comes on this podcast. I want to ask you, what have you been reading this week?
This week I have been reading Divergent. I never read Divergent when I was younger.
I've never read it.
Right. So I studied English and French at university. When I finished university, I just felt like I couldn't read anymore. I don't think I read a book for about a year after I graduated, just because I found it so difficult to do for pleasure, but it was one of the things I used to enjoy most. So 2021 or 2022, I can't remember which one, but basically there was one year where I sat down and I was like, this year you are going to start enjoying reading again. And one of the things I did to bring back my love for reading was go back to books that I read or would have read when I was younger. So that's something I still do every month. And this month's book is Divergent. I didn't read it when I was younger. I read The Hunger Games. I felt like in the Venn diagram of dystopian young adult fiction, they kind of cross over a lot. But I didn't read Divergent when I was younger. I'm reading it now. Very good. Really excellent.
How many Divergent books are there?
3.
There's 3.
So very manageable, yeah.
Right, okay. And we are getting a new Hunger Games as well.
Yes, we are. We are.
I'm really excited
book
about
and film.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, book and a film. It's
Haymitch's games. Yeah.
Well, like, I wanted that for ages, but I would read anything Suzanne Collins put out in that universe. Like, I would just, like, give me every single game. I want Phoenix games as well.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think one of the only, I love the films as well, but the only thing that they didn't do in the second film that I would have loved was they didn't show us how the previous winners won their games, which in the book, that's one of the best passages where it tells you how each of the previous winners for the Quarter Quell won their games. I wish they'd done that in the film. But like you said, that actually gives, maybe she could actually write the books individually about each and do the film. There's so much, and there's so much that could be done, and I would watch and read all of it.
Your presence on social media is just something really so special. Like every time I see you on my timeline, I stop, I even unmute it, which I don't do for anyone, by the way. I actually unmute when David has something to say. And just because I think you have such a way with words, first of all, because you are a poet, but also just the presence you bring and like the energy you bring to the timeline, I think is so, so special. And basically what I wanted to do today was if I could get you on here and dissect happiness with you, get to the bottom of happiness and give a little tiny bit of that to everyone, I think it would make everyone's day a lot better. So that's basically what I wanted to get you on here today to do. But talking about happiness, I personally think we think of happiness as this like arbitrary thing, this thing that just kind of like happens for no rhyme or reason, or, not like there's like a system behind it. But what do you think about happiness? Like, what does it mean to you and what do you define it as?
I define happiness as a state of being that I would stay in if I'd be fine to stay in if nothing changed. As in, like, in any moment where I'm like, if nothing changed in this moment, I'd I wouldn't mind at all. I define that as happiness. So my definition of happiness is actually probably closer to contentment than true happiness.
Right, okay.
True happiness as kind of as it were. I think the idea of happiness is everything being perfect, but I think in real life that looks a lot closer to contentment than
Yes.
overwhelming happiness. There's absolutely nothing wrong in the world and nothing wrong in my life. Like everything is perfect, because I don't think that exists at any point.
Yeah.
I think that's actually one of the things that holds us back from happiness and contentment, is expecting that, or putting the expectation on ourselves that everything has to be perfect for us to feel happy about it.
Yeah.
One of, like you mentioned earlier, I'm an author. I just wrote my first book, which is called Frequently Happy. And the reason I didn't call it Permanently Happy or Always Happy or How to Find Happiness is because I don't think that is a permanent state of being. And I don't think that is something that we always have to enjoy our lives. I think contentment is a lot better a thing to aim for, in terms of there's nothing too small to be happy about. And as long as there's more to be happy about than not, we are perfectly able to be content.
Yeah.
And once you get to a certain level, once kind of you're at a place where your basic needs are met, you have good support systems around you, you have things that can entertain you, you have things that you can enjoy in your day-to-day life. I think we all have a level of responsibility to ourselves, not to anyone else, but to ourselves, to find what contentment looks like to us. And when we can sit in that state of contentment more often than not, that's when we have happiness.
I think that's really interesting, because I think we naturally think of contentment as more of like a negative thing. Like it's almost compared to complacency, really, isn't it? And I think that's maybe the problem where we're going wrong with happiness in general, because we're always pushing it towards, oh, I could be, once I get to that point, I'll be happy. Or once I get, to that size, I'll be happy. Or once I've achieved that promotion, I'll be happy. Rather than thinking, I am really content with the way things are right now, and there might be goals and things that I want to strive towards, but if nothing changed, like, I would be happy. I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because also as well, when we're constantly thinking ahead, it kind of robs us of the happiness of that moment and the joy in what we have right now.
Absolutely. I think I heard a really powerful quote recently. Someone said that, or someone passed it on to me but didn't tell me what the source was, which always frustrates me because I can't give credit where it's due. But I'm sure you can find it if you search it anywhere. But it's kind of, someone said that the biggest barrier to happiness is finding your happiness in the smell of the food cooking and not the meal itself. As in, when you actually have what you want, you thought would make you happy, that's not making you happy. You're thinking of the next thing, and you're always thinking of the next thing. And that's a pattern I think we all fall into, because, like you said, contentment can be talked about and looked at negatively, because it's almost like contentment is almost seen as a lack of ambition. As in,
yes.
If I'm content with what I am, that means I'm not chasing after more and I don't want any more, because most of the things we do in society push us towards wanting more for ourselves and showing us that what you have here isn't good enough. You need this to truly be happy. When you sit in a place of contentment, it almost feels like you're doing something wrong. It feels like, maybe do I not want enough for myself? Am I not pushing myself hard enough? I personally believe there's nothing too small to be happy about, and there's nothing too small to be content with. And if genuinely you can shut out all outside noise and think, I'm actually really happy or really content with how things look like to me now, that's kind of what everyone's chasing anyway. So if you're at a point where you can recognize that, that's somewhere you should be absolutely fine to stay.
You mentioned joy as well, and you have a really great quote about joy, similar to cooking actually as well. But one of your quotes I always remember you saying, which was, I'm sorry if I'm getting this not exactly right, but I remember once you said, you think of the washing up to be a joy. Yes.
Yeah. I think I tend to think of the washing up positively. I said it one of my podcast episodes. I think of washing up positively because washing up means that I've eaten. Eating is one of the things I enjoy most, and if I get to have a good meal every day, it's been a good day.
Yeah.
And the washing up at home is my duty, it's my responsibility.
It's your job.
And if it's something that I know I have to do every day, I'd rather think about it positively than negatively. Yes, I have to do the washing up, but I'm always happy when the washing up is done. So really, there's no sense me approaching it with a negative, with a kind of, this is the other job I have to do. I know why I've had to do it. I know how I feel when it's done.
Yeah.
And those two things are enough to mean that overall is something I look at positively rather than the middle part where I'm actually doing it.
Yeah, I remember reading that you said that, because I just remember looking at my washing up and going, I was like, yeah, okay, fine. And I have a dishwasher, so I literally have nothing to complain about. But I think that was a really powerful quote. And thinking about joy in life, how do you personally seek joy out? Like, what does seeking joy look like to David?
It looks like starting with starting on the smallest scale, like the smallest scale,
like a micro joy.
Micro joy. I think those are the most important things in the fabric of our day-to-day happiness. I really do. You said just a minute ago that about, or rather you started talking about something that I I really don't like about the way we're inclined to think, where it's like, as soon as I do this, I'm allowed to be happy. As soon as I get here, I'm allowed to be happy. When I lose this amount of weight, I'm allowed to wear these clothes. When I have this kind of job, I'm allowed to do this kind of thing for myself. And it's always it's the issue of not feeling deserving of the happiness that we have where we are.
I remember when I first became disabled, so because I became disabled for an injury, and there was a very short period at the time, like when I first became disabled, where I might regain like ability to walk again. It was very like, we don't know, we'll see how rehab goes. And I remember thinking, oh, when I can walk, I'll do that. I remember thinking so clearly, like, oh, well, when I can walk, I'll wear like that dress. I'll swim, I'll do this, I'll do whatever. I'm going to go to America when I can walk. I remember like having those thoughts. And then it was only about like a year after, I remember having this breakthrough moment where I was like, but what if that doesn't happen? What do you do then? Do you just never do any of those things? And like, well, then that's like no life to live. And then I looked at when I was at my happiest, because I was going through a lot naturally. Like I was very depressed, really suffering from my mental health and body dysmorphia from becoming disabled. But I was looking at the days that I was most happy, and it was the days where I just did things, when I was actually living life. And I was like, right, yeah, rehab is important and recovery is important, but also you have to live life in between it. And you can't just keep putting things off, until that happens. And I think that was like a huge learning point for me, because I took it forward to in every other aspect of my life. I suddenly realized, I won't wait till I'm a certain size to wear that dress, or I won't wait until, my skin is clear to not wear makeup or something like that. And I just took that into like every area of my life.
Hearing you say that makes so much sense, because one of my favorite things about your content is how readily you share the things that bring you joy and how often you do them. Every month, I know if I were to take Sophie's content for a month, I know I'm going to see you go to the cinema, you're going to have tiramisu, you're going to see your besties, and you're going to wear something fantastic. And I know that's going to happen regularly in your life when you share that. And even your example of that is really powerful for me personally, because it's like, you just let you really from the outside you know how to let yourself be happy and how to give yourself those joys, no matter. Obviously, it's very easy online for everything to look perfect. And I know that you, like anyone, must go through your difficult days offline and all those kind of things. What I'm very aware of is that you never let it stop you from doing your favorite things and letting yourself have that joy. And it's a wonderful example. I mean, for me, but I'm sure for everyone who consumes everything you do.
I just love how you've summed up Sophie Butler Core. Like, there was Sophie Butler Core. That is what it is. But it's true. But it goes back to what we were saying about micro joys, and it's like that is the easiest way. I think of it as like sprinkling a little bit of sunshine into your day, because there are very like clear cut things that might bring me happiness, like whether it's going on holiday, going to concerts. That can't happen every day. But what can happen every day? Like for me, a macro joy is I live quite near the water, so getting to see the water every day. I can physically go do that because I can take myself to the water. It takes 5 minutes of my day. I can get up half an hour earlier and have a coffee. I never thought getting up half an hour earlier would be a micro joy of mine when I was a teenager, but it is, because it means I get that quiet time with myself where I have to rush around and do things with other people. But what is that micro joys that you put in your day?
Things like wearing socks in the morning and making my feet warm first thing, and also I'm wearing socks right now that have butterflies. I don't know if I can put them in the camera, but they've got butterflies on them. And these socks always remind me. Hiya? Yeah. There we go. These socks remind me that when butterflies obviously can't see their own wings. I assume they don't have mirrors, they might, but butterflies can't see their own wings. But when a butterfly flies around, it brings everyone else joy because they can see the happiness. And it reminds me that if I give myself the permission to be happy, I give myself the permission to feel joy, other people can feel and see that coming from me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really true. But it can feel really, especially online, when you can hear so many people's opinions of you and how you present yourself online and what you share, it can feel really like hard to sometimes share joy.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, maybe it's different elsewhere with different cultures, but like I feel like Britain specifically, it's a bit of a joy thief, of very much like, well, if I'm not happy, you can't be happy, or if I had it hard, you've got to have it hard kind of attitude. And I don't know, I thought a lot about that growing up, like in Britain, but it is really hard sometimes. I feel quite obnoxious when I share joy.
I obviously, well, I grew up in the UK.
Yeah.
So I can only speak for the culture and society in UK, and my own personal experiences. Everything I say obviously is anecdotal, like it's not, I haven't done any studies on this, but just from what I've experienced and what I experience when I share content about feeling happy and all those kinds of things, it's really interesting. The vast majority, 99%, can't be emphasized enough, of people are always super warm and kind in my comments and my messages, and I have a wonderful online community. But obviously, when a lot of people see the things you do, it will find people who don't particularly enjoy it. But it's really interesting. The people who don't like what I do, it always comes from, the things they say always come from a place where I'm very aware that this isn't from, you haven't said this from a joyful place. You've said this from a place of hurt that actually has nothing to do with me specifically. Yeah. Every year when springtime comes, I'll do a poem on how when the sun is out, my mood is different and life is different. I feel so good when the sun comes out. And when I did that video, I do almost the same video every year. When I did it last year, someone commented something really, they were like, I'm actually really sick of you doing this series. It's super arrogant and disgusting. And I was just like, I was shocked, but I wasn't angry or upset. I really sat with it for a minute because it made me really upset to think that me being happy that the sun was out would produce this visceral reaction in someone where they felt like telling me that I was being really arrogant for enjoying.
Is such a strong
it's
word
it's a really strong word, but it's one, and it was actually that happened whilst I was in the early stages of writing the book, and it really helped me solidify the things that I think around us accepting and feeling happiness and doing the things that will make us happy. And I think the simple answer to a lot of the things is a lot of the time we feel like we don't deserve it. Everything we were just talking about and our micro joys and all of those kinds of things, sometimes it can feel like to acknowledge those things and to even accept them and to do them for ourselves, it feels like we're cheating somehow, or we're faking it, or we're making things up. It's like something this small couldn't possibly make me happy. And a lot of that is due to us rejecting the notion of us being happy as a concept. Like, it's like, I don't deserve this happiness, exactly as we were listening for, because my job isn't good enough, because I don't look a certain way, because I don't exercise enough, because all of the things that would tell us that we're not good enough for everything, we use those things also to tell ourselves we're not worthy or deserving of joy or happiness. My personal philosophy is, if you exist, you matter. And by virtue of your existence, and by virtue of you mattering, you deserve a happy existence. So anything you can do to make your existence happy, you automatically deserve. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to earn it. You deserve anything that brings you joy, however small it is, just because you exist. And I really, really want, in all the content that I make, when I wrote this book, all of this kind of stuff, I really want everyone to be able to feel like that, because I feel like when you can do that, you're kinder to yourself, you're kinder to other people, and we just deny ourselves less and are more capable of receiving happiness and seeing other people happy without it hurting us.
Yeah, because I think when you yourself think, I don't, let's say if I thought I don't deserve happiness, that starts to radiate out into the world, because the way you interact with people becomes so much more hostile. And you think, it makes your experience moving through the world so much harder. And I think sometimes because I've been in those spaces in my life where I've been really quite like a hostile person, or especially when I was a moody little teenager as well, I'm thinking, but back in my early 20s, like before I really went through a lot of realizations when I became disabled and stuff, like it really made me just not a great person to be around. And I remember for something my dad always told me was, if you are a good person and if you are a warm person, you will attract good and warm people. And I think that's something I really carried through. Like, I really remembered that, because I remember thinking, I want to be the kind of people that I want to attract around me. And I want to have friends around me who they feel like they can come to me and share good news with me. And I want my friends to know that I would be happy for them. I would hate it if my friend sat there and thought, oh, I couldn't tell Sophie about that because she'd be jealous, or she'd be, one way about it. And I think it's just not a nice way to move through the world. Thinking about the current climate, obviously online, we've just been talking about what it's like online, but also in the real world as well. It seems like fear-mongering is having a little comeback. And I feel like it is so much easier now to get clicks and get engagement through fear-mongering, through toxic behaviours like we've just been talking about. And I think you're such a positive role model, I think, for people of all ages, but I think particularly of young men as well, because I think we are, and it has been a very big topic in the media, talking about young men becoming indoctrinated into certain spaces, and a lot of conversations about toxic masculinity. And I think you have such a really unique way of displaying a more sort of alternative masculinity. And I don't know if that's even the right way that I would describe it, but that's maybe how I would see it. Just the way you are quite softer in your poetry, and you're not afraid to, as you are, show your feelings through your poetry and talk about all of these things that we're talking about here. There's a lot of men who wouldn't be comfortable with doing that. Has the pressures around masculinity ever affected you and your personal journey, but also like your work and what you put out into the world?
It's really kind of you to say that. It's affected it in terms of, I'd say it's affected my work positively, in that the more I've done things the way I've done things, the more I've been open and emotional online and shared that, the negative reactions I get they weigh nothing in comparison to. I get a lot of messages from young men who kind of tell me, you've really helped me to change my perspective on this. You've validated my feelings on this. You've helped me to articulate the way I feel in a way that I couldn't before. And messages like that to me weigh 100 times more than, a million times more than any negative thing that I would get for being open and emotional online. I think one of the biggest and worst myths there are around emotions is that not feeling makes you stronger in some way. Firstly, because it's patently false. Everything in life is based on emotions. The way everybody behaves is based on their emotions. You can't deny the existence of everything. Every action comes from an emotional place, and everybody feels. So to deny the reality that we feel literally puts us in a place of immediate delusion that's going to lead to worse and worse things. When you talk about, especially the figures who, at the moment, there's a lot of risk to young men going into finding certain spaces on the internet and believing that this is the way I should think, this is the way I should treat people. It's strong to hide your feelings and to treat people a certain way to feel better. One of the big dangers of that is not just how much it affects then the people they come into contact with, but it also denies them so much. It denies them the exploration of their own feelings. It denies them the wonderful experience of deeply experiencing your own feelings and connecting to other people through that. That for me really is life's fabric. Like there's nothing better than experiencing what you feel, knowing what you feel and understanding it, and being able to connect with other people because of that. Really and the way that I feel like a lot of these figures who kind of preach toxic male behaviors and try and perpetuate those things, firstly, they will profit from it, which is one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people don't realize. Whenever we know as content creators, whenever you post something or whenever you put something out there, there's an agenda to it. And I use the word agenda, which has negative connotations, but agenda literally just means there's an objective that I want out of this. Yeah. We do the content that we do. You do the content you do because you want people to feel better after seeing it. Mm-hmm. That's the agenda, and it's a positive one. A lot of the figures who bring kind of, these negative ideals to young men, their agenda is to profit from them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of money in outrage.
There's a huge amount of money in outrage, And all it does is damages the people they're profiting from and deprives society of what would otherwise be wonderful, wonderful people and what could always be wonderful people. I'm also a big believer in rehabilitation and redemption. I don't think anyone's ever lost cause. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm grateful for the place where my content sits, because I'm aware that literally just doing what I do and being proud and happy to be an openly emotional person, an openly emotional man online, and show that you gain deeper connections with people and with self through acknowledging and exploring your emotions and being open and honest and vulnerable. I'm really proud and happy to give that example now as I grow as a creator, as hopefully I get to do more in the creative spaces, I get to write more and share more. I'm really hoping to become a stronger, more powerful example. And the biggest thing that I think about, this links back actually quite nicely to the whole idea of joy being like a fanciful thing that no one needs. Hope and joy are tools just as much as hard work and discipline and all those kinds of things. Life can be really difficult. Life can be really tough. There's a lot, you can open your phone and scroll to see 10 things that genuinely negatively affect your nervous system before you get out of bed. Being able to be optimistic, being able to find joy for ourselves and being able to move through that, those things are just as necessary for our survival and enjoyment of life as anything else. So they're not fanciful things. They're not, things that mean we're sticking our heads in the sand. I see everything for what it is, and I choose this path of joy and happiness because I know it will bring me, because I know what it will bring me, rather than, I'm being like this because I'm fanciful or because I'm not in reality. I'm very much in reality, which is why I know that hope and joy are so necessary.
Yeah, and I think it's even more necessary than ever, kind of the climate that we're currently in. And I love the way you say that about, it's not about sticking your head in the sand and going, la, 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 ignorance is bliss, I'm happy. It is, I see the situation we're in around the world in so many different circumstances. Well, I could list off a load of different awful things that are going off in the world right now, but being happy in my individual life and the way I move through the world doesn't mean that I'm choosing to ignore that. It means that I look at the things that are going on around the world, I stay informed, and I choose to be happy, because how else can you productively move forward? Because I think it's no good also then just sitting there and going, oh, well, the world's shit everyone's shit, everyone's this, that, or whatever, you know, the world, it's a lost cause. How can you productively move through the world and create change? And that's
the biggest one.
That's at the end of the day what we want, isn't it? When we're really frustrated with the way the world is going, whether that is in, you know, politics or society, whatever it is, we ultimately want things to change.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can create productive change moving through with an unhappy mindset.
Absolutely. If you don't believe in hope and joy, how can you possibly hope to create it elsewhere?
Yeah. What do I want the world to look like, and what attitude do I want to be carrying it through? What attitude is going to help create that? Because it might not help to create it on like a worldwide scale, but if I can create, even just my friends coming for dinner, if I can make that room for that 2 hours be a safe and happy space, that is my job done for the day. Like, that is me. I would be happy with that. And I can do that just by choosing to show up and help create that happy environment.
When we're talking about the power of micro joys and micro happinesses, the ripple effect of micro joys is also a huge deal. You might change the course of somebody's month from a 2-hour dinner, like you said.
Yeah.
Us choosing to spread our happiness or just to show it in a certain way, the ripple effect from that could be absolutely huge. So yeah, there's never anything too small to be happy about or too small to spread joy with. Yeah.
I love that quote. You've said it a few times now, and I'm like, oh, that's really good. I need to remember it.
It's my life philosophy.
Your life philosophy. I'm going to be writing it down. If I get it tattooed, mind your business. Last year, you documented some of your journey in your shoulder injury recovery. First of all, how are you getting on? How is your shoulder?
Much better, thank you. It's a 12-month recovery process. I had an operation in May last year, so we're kind of almost there. I've got most of my mobility back and stuff, still having to do daily physio and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It being cold doesn't help either because it makes it hurt a lot. I've got metal in it now, so it makes it hurt. But other than that, all good.
Getting on well, yeah. I've loved seeing you share your recovery journey. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of it you probably kept private, and you've not shared probably a lot of your maybe like more down days, whatever. But I feel like you've kept it quite balanced, and I feel like I'm someone, obviously, I became a wheelchair user through having an injury. Very different injury, very different recovery process, very different journeys. But at the end of the day, I think we can both relate to that feeling of the process of having an injury and having to be patient with the recovery process. If you just say it's a 12-month recovery process, for me, it's like an ongoing injury. It'd be a lifelong injury, but there is that patience that you have to have. And when I first broke my back and I became disabled, I was like, right, no, tell me what to do and I'll do it in half the time that you're meant to. I remember being like that. I remember being in hospital bed being like, right, tell me what to do. And they were like, well, right now you wait. You wait for a place to come up at rehab and you rest and you recover. And I was like, no. I was like, give me the list of things I need to do. It's something I used to always tell myself when I'd be really frustrated because I was in hospital for 4 months. I didn't get to go home for that 4 months. And something I used to always tell myself was, it won't be like this in a year's time. And that really became like a bit of like a quote that I really remember, because I literally remember like repeating it to myself over and over. It won't be like this in a year's time, won't be like this in a year's time. And I actually use it now on both good and bad days, because for bad days, I think, won't be like this in a year's time. This time next year, I might be sitting in Italy having a tiramisu. You know, you never know where you're going to be in a year's time. But also, in that year that I am sitting in Italy having a tiramisu, it might not be like this next year. So enjoy it and sit with it now. And I think you can look at it both ways. When you're in the early stages of recovery for your shoulder injury, how did you feel that sense of frustration as well? And how did you deal with it?
Oh, massively. One of the things that I do most for my mental health is exercise, and suddenly found myself unable to do that.
You did the 75 hard, right?
I did do 75 hard, yeah.
So that's a huge
big
switch.
It was literally a year on from doing 75 hard. I had my arm in this sling for 2 months and then won't be able to use it properly for up to a year. And that was really, really difficult to come to terms with. Even in terms of, like you said, like you immediately, it's like, tell me what I need to do to get back to full fit. I'll do it. And like, it's so funny you say like, I'll do it in half the time. When I told one of my friends that, it's a year's recovery. It's like, oh, bro, don't be pessimistic. You'll be back in 6 months. It's like, science dictates.
Well, actually.
If I want to use my arm for the rest of my life, this should take me a year. But it was humbling in a very good way, in that, you know, I pride myself on being, you know, a disciplined person, someone who does what they need to for themselves. And that before has looked like to me, take on a challenge like 75 hard, you know, exercise 2 times a day and do all that kind of stuff. Not even for the sake of how I look or how it's more for how I feel and what I think of myself mentally and how and to be able to trust myself to do whatever I need to do whenever I need to do it. That's always been my big thing. That's like, I want to be able to, discipline to me means being able to trust myself to do what I need to do when I need to do it.
Yeah.
And when it's always looked the same, as in go to the gym when you said you go to the gym, make your bed when you say you make your bed, all that kind of stuff. When it then comes to rest for 2 months, I don't do anything, which doesn't come naturally. That is a true test of, can you do what you need to do for yourself when you need to do it?
Yeah.
And didn't fail the test per se, but I wouldn't say that I did it I did it begrudgingly, like really begrudgingly. Like it was really tough. I was writing the book at the same time. The book is called Frequently Happy and I wasn't. And it was really tough for me to have the patience, like you said, to do what I needed to do. But again, it came down to, it was a real test of my philosophies. I say that I care about myself very much. Do I care about myself enough to give myself this patience? Anyone else, if they came to me for advice in this situation, I know exactly what I tell them. Would I listen to that advice myself? So when I say it was humbling, it was a time where it tested my principles and made me treat myself in the way that I should always be treating myself. So now, even though things are much better, the lesson has stuck with me, where it's kind of like, even if I start to feel a bit tired or fatigued, usually it's kind of thing like, nope, I'll push through fatigue. I'll push through anything to get things done. Even content wise, like I'll sit and have a 12-hour editing session, even though I know I should sleep and all that kind of stuff. But it's really it's given me a new appreciation for myself and tested my principles to the point where I'm like, no, I need to actually act on these things all the time. If I need time, if I need patience, if I need to take time off, if I need to rest, I need to do those things when I need to do them. I need to do them proactively, not reactively.
Yes.
Yeah. It should take an injury for me to take some rest. I should take a rest so I don't get injured, you know? Yeah, that kind of thing.
But sometimes it takes something to actually stop you in your tracks and make you like reassess. I remember you shared a reel, and it was a really great reel, and you were showing about how fitness for you after you had your injury was very different, and how you used it to like aid your recovery. So whether that was shoulder mobility exercises, which by the way I'm very familiar with. I don't have any shoulder injuries, touch wood, but because of my wheelchair use, I'm very prone to them.
Okay.
So I do a lot of shoulder mobility as like prevention work, which again, before my injury was completely alien to me. I was like, but I don't have a shoulder injury. And they were like, oh, this is so you don't get one. So I was like, right, okay. But yeah, you shared that you were doing a lot of mobility work. You were doing like walks with your brother, which was really nice to see. And it was almost like a reframing of fitness, wasn't it?
Yes.
Kind of like changing your idea of what can I do for my health and well-being that's going to help me right now. And it's not 2 workouts a day.
Yeah, you recently shared a really great post about how the way you looked at fitness has changed through your life. And I think a lot of us come to fitness in the same way, as in, this is going to make me look good. Which is, there's nothing wrong with it. That's obviously, it's a benefit, you know, and it's good to have, there's nothing wrong with having confidence in the way you look and be happy with the way you look at all. But kind of fitness is it contributes to so much more than that in our lives. And especially last year, weirdly after I did 75 hard as well, actually, both of those things really helped me to redefine what fitness means to me. And last year, when I couldn't exercise the way that I was used to, the worst, like physically, there were changes, but that didn't bother me anywhere near as much as just the mental aspect of it and being able to have the release through exercise that I usually have and that kind of stuff. So I think it also really taught me that you can get to a place of being really comfortable, and there's circumstances outside your control change, and you have to find a new place of being comfortable. There's never going to be a place where we've learned it all, and this place of contentment will stay forever. Literally, like you just said, you know, everything will pass at some point, even the good stuff.
Yeah.
And when the good stuff that we actually didn't want to go passes, and you find yourself in in a difficult place, it's really hard to be able to. Well, it's hard to give ourselves permission to grieve what's gone, and in a healthy way, reach for the next positive thing, and to actually acknowledge and accept that, okay, I actually have to sit in this difficult place for however long, because it's provided me with something that ultimately I need, even if I can't see it right now.
Yeah, I really felt that last year, because I lived with my best friend Dan for 2 years. Loved it, best 2 years of my life. And then time came where we were leaving the flat anyway. He moved in with his partner, and I was like, okay. I made the decision to live on my own.
How have you found that?
And it was really hard at first. Like, I knew it would be a tough transition, but I didn't realize how long it would take to basically kind of just be okay with it. So I remember being like really not upset that I wasn't living with Dan anymore, because I was really happy for him. And also, he's very much still in my life. I cannot get rid of him. But so it's not like, you know, we weren't suddenly friends anymore. That would be a different discussion. And he handled it with such grace and really really couldn't have dealt with the situation better. But I was more just grieving and like, oh, this was the way I used to live. And like now it's different. It's an adjustment period. That's like all it is. And I kind of basically I found it really hard to appreciate all the things I now love about living alone, because I was so happy living with Dan. I couldn't quite get in my head that this was also happiness. It just looked a bit different. And it took me a long time to be like, okay, not only am I okay with living alone, I actually quite like living alone. I can go cinema wherever I want. I don't have to like wait for anyone else to be like, oh, do you want to come see this? Because normally, you know, me and Dan were like, oh, I'll go with you, whatever. But now I can just get up, do what I want. You know, like cooking is very much on my schedule. All of these things I can get up and, you know, have a bit of quiet time whenever I want. All of these things that I really value personally as an individual, I wasn't able to see them because I was constantly thinking like, oh, when I lived with Dan, we would watch TV every evening. And I was reminiscing so much about all these lovely, happy memories. I wasn't able to see what was right in front of me and what was like really good in that moment.
I think it's really difficult as well when you're going through those transitionary periods where you're aware you're not going to feel like this forever, but that doesn't make it any less difficult. And feeling behind schedule, like you said, like you weren't expecting to feel that down about not living with Dan for as long. And that almost adds to this level of frustration on top of the sadness that you feel, where it's like, this should be over by now, or I'm not getting over this quick enough, and actually just letting things happen as they need to and be like, okay, do you know what? I'm just going to, I do feel this, and I'm going to feel it until I don't. And I'm not going to put any expectations on when I shouldn't feel like this anymore. That's really hard to do.
Because we can't put like a timer on a bracket. This is how long you should be upset about this sort of thing.
If only.
I remember watching Sex and the City years ago, and they had like this formula to how long it should take to get over a breakup. And apparently it's half the time you was with the person.
Okay.
And at the time I was like, okay.
The math sounds logical.
It's probably based in some kind of attachment theory, but also I'm like, yeah, but emotions are emotions and life is life. Like sometimes you could break up with someone 10 years later, you could remember a memory and go, oh, maybe you missed them for 5 minutes, you know, and then you move on with your day. I don't think you can program, but we try to, because it makes life more efficient.
It does. It makes things easier to understand when we put them in absolutes, but there's so little that's absolute. I don't think anything's absolute, really.
Yeah, that's something that I really struggle with, because I want everything to be black and white. I want everything to be efficient and understood. And when it's not, when it's a bit more like messy and human, I'm like, don't like that. That's harder to like compute and understand and move on from. But I think life isn't, as you say, life isn't that easy of a journey. It's not
that to return to earlier when you said what is happiness, I feel like I'm much happier on average now, because I've very much accepted that there are it's only going to be for moments at a time where I feel like there's absolutely nothing wrong. Generally, that's not going to be the case, but that doesn't mean I can't be happy in times where things aren't perfect. Yeah,
absolutely. And leads me nicely on to a quote I have from you here, and I'm hoping I've got this right. Paraphrasing, if not. You have to practice feeling better. Practice is hard, but practice makes perfect.
Yes, that's from one of my podcast episodes, and I posted the clip from that on social media. That was another time where I got a lot of people said, oh, I really like this point, but you said practice makes perfect, and practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect doesn't exist. Practice makes better. I 100%, I agreed with that 100%. In the wider context of what I was saying, I only used the phrase practice makes perfect because that's the phrase that we're used to. I generally believe, that perfect doesn't exist. Practice makes better. So I will paraphrase myself and say it better and say that, when we're used to not feeling great, it takes a while to get used to having better circumstances, if that makes sense. It takes a while for us to be able to recognize it, for it to sink in, especially when you've worked. I mean, a lot of the time when you've had bad circumstances and then you create better for yourself, you've worked through a lot to get there, but you're more used to being in the space you were in previously, and it's really difficult to feel the good that's there. And you have to practice. That's why practicing gratitude and all that kind of stuff is so important, because you're letting in emotions that haven't existed to you before. So you have to get used to feeling them. And practice does make better. It's a tough thing to do, because practicing anything makes you tired. If you practice the piano for 10 hours, your fingers would be tired. Practice football for an hour, like your legs would be tired. But practicing feeling better is tiring for the best reasons, because it allows more space for us to feel the good things that existed where they didn't used to.
Yeah. It's something that I really struggle with. I really went through last year just ruminated on a lot of feelings for so long. And I think it's not always the case, but I think a lot of the time as well, we end up creating a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think, it's really hard to be, I think you need to strike a balance of being caring to yourself and appreciating what you're going through and understanding and allow yourself to feel those emotions, but also walking that fine line of, I don't want to let myself sit here and rot in these feelings. I think feel your feelings when you feel them, yes, but sometimes sadness, I think, can be a bit of a habit where you ruminate in that. If you're used to feeling that and you feel that every day and you don't give yourself a chance to feel anything else, it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely. It's so easy to find a strange comfort in, because even though it's not positive, actually no, I don't like using positive. Even though it's not ideal,
yeah,
it's familiar. So at least you know what to expect from it. And hope for different and doing things differently is scary because you don't know what you sometimes you're not even sure what it looks like, and you're not used to experiencing it. And that there's a level of fear to that, which is perfectly valid and perfectly normal. So in the sadness, at least there's the familiarity of, this doesn't feel great, but at least I know what to expect here. Yeah. And it's really, really hard to break out of that space, which is why we need to be so proud of ourselves when we manage to, because it's really easy to sit in that, and in sitting in that, miss opportunities for better because we're so used to being where we are, and because we keep telling ourselves the same things and following the same patterns.
Yeah. I think as well, if you're if you're like grieving, or if you're maybe like going for a breakup, or maybe there's there's a specific thing that you are maybe like sad about, and you've been in that rumination sort of phase for like a while, it can almost feel like to accept that you can be happy and you can start to practice, moving on almost. It kind of feels like you have to let go of that. And I feel like in the back of the mind, you know that. And that's why part of the reason why you don't want to do it, because you're like, oh, but you don't want to let go of that thing. Yeah. So almost like holding on to the sadness and the grief is a way of holding on to those things that weren't these messy emotions before. Before it was love and happiness and joy. And you have to find a way to reformulate and feel those emotions again in a new form. That's really beautifully put. But instead of doing that, you hold on to the sadness and the grief, because that is the final act of love, isn't it? Letting go. Yeah. They say grief is the final act of love, is something they say like that. Or grief is love persevering. Yeah, they say something like that. It's a really beautiful quote. I think I've stole it from WandaVision. When you're really stuck in that mindset of you've been going through a really bad time, I think it can really take a lot to just say, I'm going to give life a better try, or I'm going to give myself a chance to be happy and have a better day. And I saw this quote the other day, and it was someone just said, do it miserably. It maybe you show up day one and you do it miserably, but you show up and you do the things that long term are going to create better habits for you, and long term you're going to find happiness out of it. Like maybe you might not like eating dinner alone, but you still got to eat. So do it miserably, and over time, maybe that will get easier. Maybe then you'll eventually even find joy in it. You don't know. But if you've got to do it, just do it miserably. You don't have to do everything happy in order to do it. That's what exactly. Things don't have to, back to what we were saying before, things don't have to look a certain way for you to deserve these things. You don't have to be in this place to feel like you merit having this. You can start to do it before you feel like you deserve it. And that will help you into the place where you can feel like you deserve it. Yeah. Absolutely. Mindful practices. Thinking about mindful practices. I used to be one of those people that was very much like, why the fuck would I need the gratitude channel? Very much was. I think for me, it felt like a really like Americanized kind of like thing. And I think now the older that I've got and the more I kind of have to be, I've realized I have to be more sort of proactive or just conscious about my happiness and my daily joy. Something that I appreciate a lot more, especially as I've got a bit older. You do practice sort of like mindful joy, don't you? And a lot of the joy, because obviously you are a very happy, joyful person, but there are some practices that you have in your everyday life. I know you do on your podcast. Yeah, I mean, I think because mindfulness is very much not reached the mainstream, because it's not like I was ground zero, like day one mindful. Yeah, no, I wasn't at all. But the way that mindfulness exists in the mainstream, and especially in capitalism, makes it feel inaccessible to a lot of people, including me. Like I very much used to think mindfulness is what, genuinely, when I was like at university, I first started to hear about this kind of stuff.
and I was 18, 19. I come from a low income background. So I genuinely used to think, yeah, when I'm rich, I can be mindful. Like when I have enough money, I can do yoga and I can have my perfectly white room with a perfect mat in the middle. And I can, I can go to expensive classes and I can do all these things that will make me, they'll make me feel better and make me a mindful person. But actual mindfulness practices have no barrier to entry. Something that massively changed my life was somebody telling me that mindfulness can just be a deep breath. And we're all here because we're breathing. I know you're a big Pitbull fan. Every day above every day
above Brown's a great day. That man has changed my life, right? Other than you are one of my probably one of my motivational heroes, but above you it's Pitbull. Sorry.
I can't argue. I can't be upset with that.
Man.
I can't be upset with that. I hope to one day see you in a bowl cap at a concert.
I want tickets so right. Let me go. If anyone has wheelchair accessible tickets to Pitbull, the O2 Arena, I think it's in April. Please sell them to me. I will go in a ball cap. Please. But he's very motivational.
Like completely unironically, extremely motivational. Sorry, but what I was actually saying was that mindfulness can be as simple as a deep breath.
Yeah.
And I take a million breaths a day. If 10 of them are deeper than usual, I've taken a moment of mindfulness of myself. And reframing it like that has really helped me to realize that I'm a very mindful person. Like I write down the things I feel all the time. I just wasn't calling it journaling.
Yeah.
Giving things names helps us to categorize them and helps us to define what we're doing. But without realizing, I think a lot of us do practice mindfulness. And I think once we get to know what mindfulness practices are, that's where we can find out, okay, this actually suits me and the things that I do to feel better anyway.
Yeah.
Closing my eyes and taking a deep breath and all that kind of stuff. I used to do a lot of sports when I was younger. I used to do that before matches and before games to calm myself down.
Yeah.
And that is, an avenue into meditation. So that would be, for me, meditation and journaling. Those are my two big practices that I do regularly. And there's no perfect way to do any of them because essentially you're doing it to make yourself feel better. So whatever works for you is what is you practicing mindfulness, if that makes sense. Yeah.
For me, it's actually turning my music off because I've got music on constantly, 24/7. I do. When you live alone as well, you always have something on in the background. But for me, it's maybe like I'm on the tube, like in the afternoon, I go, right, okay, I'm going to take my earphones off now. And it's actually just giving my ears a little break, giving me a chance to actually be aware of my surroundings as well, which is always great when you're in public. But or even just at home, being around and grabbing my coffee, and I'm not going to put the TV on today. I'm not going to have YouTube on while I eat like a medieval king, because that's something that I always have to do as well. And just taking that time to actually be around my environment, that's for me is more mindful because I'm more thinking about my settings. But you open your podcast, don't you, with, is it breathing exercises?
Yes, I do. Yeah, just a really simple one, yeah.
Do you want to take us through them?
Absolutely.
I'll do them. You go for them and I'll do them like a listener.
Okay. If you're able to, please close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. And a deep breath out. Relax your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Take another deep breath in. And another breath out. You can open your eyes now.
I feel very mindful. Very familiar.
It just makes everything feel a little bit more still.
It does. I think it just helps you to slow down a little bit. Even my talking, as I open my eyes, I slow down. Have you noticed? Yeah. I'm a bit of like a fast talker. Same,
likewise. But it's just a really easy way to regulate. And then if I'm actually going to meditate properly, then I'll go into doing something longer or whatever. But on a day-to-day basis, if you're having a moment where you feel really overwhelmed, it's very easy to be able to just do something like that. Yeah.
And that's something you could do at a desk, or you could, and believe me, I have had to do this in like the middle of Waitrose before, especially if you go during the school run. But like that is something that you could do in most environments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's how mindfulness should be and should feel, that there's no barrier to entry, and there's no requirement. You don't have to be a certain way or even be in a certain space or environment to be able to practice a moment of it. Yeah,
I love that. Thank you for taking us through it. Pleasure. First of all, does Katrina feel mindful as well? Your book, Frequently Happy, your firstborn baby, right?
Yes,
first book?
absolutely.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you for sending. Oh, I do have it here. Love Also, it matches my outfit kind of.
It does.
Do that on purpose. I love it. I did not do that on purpose, but I'm happy about it. But your book, Frequently Happy, it's described as the handbook for navigating the seasons of life, which I love that summary. Also, as well, I love that obviously it's got your amazing poetry in it, but it's got journaling prompts through there.
Yes.
I personally really loved that. Wasn't expecting it, but I opened it, so I got a bit excited. Literally got my pen out so quick up my bag. I had it opened in the calf because I sometimes think about I'd like to journal and be like do that more, but I never know what to ask myself because journaling is normally what are 3 things you're grateful for today, which can be a good starting question, obviously. But I think there are some questions you've put in there which made me actually really stop and think. And I'm thinking like, oh, I've actually never thought about that before. I've never asked myself. So I really, really appreciate that in there. I'm going to read you my favourite quote. And I told you I was going to read you my favourite quote, but I didn't tell you what one it was going to be.
No, you did not.
So let me find it. Okay, my favourite quote. It's from Growing Cold, Hard Earth. If winter was my enemy, the cold would bother only me. The dark would hold me in my home. The cold would not release my bones. Winter doesn't hate me, though. So should I let my hatred go? Maybe in the wintertime, not everything must cease to grow. I think for me, I really like that one personally because I absolutely hate winter. No, I do. I really do absolutely hate it. Actually, every time it gets to maybe like October time, I see particularly my friend Kudzai looking at me going, I need to do a welfare check because he sees the sun start to go down earlier in the day and he's looking at me like, oh no, it's not looking good. But I really struggle with the dark. I really struggle with the cold. And I think when it's a natural thing that happens, right? Yeah. Like we experience it, particularly more in this country because it's just so dark and grey here. But it's something that just happens to all of us. But I feel like because I have such a passion for the summer, I've really felt almost victimised. Raise your hands if you felt victimised by UK winter. We're all raising our hands. I mean, I still hate it. I still hate the winter, but I don't feel as victimized as I did before I read that. And I think I just more thought of it as something that is happening and we're all experiencing it. It's not something that only I'm going through. And it also means that spring will come soon. Yeah. Summer will come soon. When you were writing the book, obviously you've separated it into the seasons, winter, spring, summer and autumn, right?
Yes.
Was there a reason why you decided to sort of formulate it like that?
Yes, I wanted it to be something that can be relevant to anybody, anytime, all year round. And each chapter, like you said, has a poem, a reflection, a personal reflection from me, and a journal prompt for every reader. So ideally, by the time this book is finished, it'll be very unique and individual to you because you've had your own space to feel based on the things that I've said. I wanted it to be seasonal because there are certain things that we do tend to feel every year around every season. When I was writing it is when I really realized, wow, I really feel down every single winter. And at first, even when I started trying to write it, I started to write reasons why I shouldn't feel down. But I was like, no, actually, I feel down for very good reasons. Like it's dark at 4 and I have to work until later than that. Like, there's no, I don't enjoy, I objectively don't enjoy this, but I refuse to go a quarter minimum of my year feeling sad just because this exists, knowing that it exists. There has to be a way to feel differently about it. And I know that that's not just personal to me. You've literally told me exactly the same thing. I know that recognizing that doesn't mean that when it starts to get dark earlier, now the end of this year, that I'm not going to feel those same things. I am. So making it seasonal was kind of to make sure that anytime someone picks this up throughout life, it will be relevant and you'll be able to feel whatever you need to, but that might even change year to year. Like next winter, it might be something different to this winter. But it's the point of it was to make sure that it's relevant all the time, which I really do think it is.
Yeah, I think that's really good as well, because I think a lot of the time, obviously, when there are certain books that I read The Great Gatsby every summer. I don't know why, to me, that is a summer...
I hear it. I completely understand.
It's a summer book to me. I read it every summer. I go on holiday, I sit by the pool, put my earphones in, I'll listen to The Great Gatsby. But I think this is something, and I've only gone through the winter section, so I'm really excited to get to spring and summer and see, what it is that you've got to say about those seasons as well. And it is that like evergreen that you've got something to say about every season and the way that we're moving through the year. I think it would be really, really interesting. But congratulations on this book.
Thank you.
I'm genuinely really loving it so far. I took it to the cafe the other day. Something I said to myself all week. I said, right, get through this week. The weekend, we go got pistachio croissant.
Lovely.
Got coffee, and I was like, right, I'm going to sit with David's book and I'm going to go through it. And that's when I discovered it had journaling points. And I was like, oh, I was like, perfect. Put the croissant down. But do you have a favourite passage from your book?
it changes from time to time, but my current favorite passage is actually from the same chapter that you read from.
Do you want to read it?
I would love to read
Read
it.
it for you.
Yeah, my favorite chapter is from, my favorite passage at the moment is from the very first chapter, which is called Growth in Cold Hard Earth, because I need it specifically now.
Yeah.
Like I keep going back to it because it's how I feel and it's what I need. I'm not going to read your journaling prompt. Your journaling. My favorite passage is the last couple of paragraphs of this chapter, which read, life itself is seasonal. We have seasons of hard work, seasons of rest, seasons of joy, and seasons of sadness. If I were to choose every season, I would only choose seasons I like. It's in the seasons we don't choose, however, that we grow in the ways we wouldn't expect, often in the ways we need to most. Now I try to greet winter with this knowledge. Although it may not be my preferred season, it still has much to offer us all. Things don't typically grow in the winter, but we can try to.
I love that. So the journaling prompts were, what do you struggle with most in the winter? What is something you don't mind so much about the winter that could help you grow through it? And I sat there in that cafe and I went, what is good about the winter? Or what don't I mind so much? But I'll read my answers to you. Struggle with the most, I said as well, the cold, dark, lonely days, late sunrises and early sunsets, and having to wear a coat. I find coats really overstimulating. Probably you can tell by the fact I'm sitting here shivering, but I do just find coats really overstimulating when you're like rushing around.
Yeah.
But the question, what is something you don't mind so much about the winter that could help you grow through it? I really had to sit there and be like, it really made me think like, what is okay about
Which
the
is
winter?
this is really nice to hear, because I wanted it to challenge people.
Yeah,
like as much
it wasn't
as
like a passive experience. Because sometimes when I got into the habit of journaling before, and it was very much like, it was very same thing every day. What are 3 things you're grateful for? And some people love doing that, and that's absolutely fine if people find it beneficial. But I would just kind of be like, breathing, sunshine, like, and I wouldn't think about what I was answering. I would say things that I think I should probably be grateful for, rather than things that were probably like my truth, so to speak. But I said the opportunity to slow down in the winter, spend more cozy days at home, more cinema trips, which is funny because you brought up cinema earlier, and the feeling of a warm coffee in my cold hands is what I feel grateful for in the winter.
That's
Love that.
wonderful.
I'm gonna play a game with you.
Let's do it.
I feel like Jigsaw. Do you want to play a game, David?
That makes me feel considerably more on edge than I was 3 seconds ago.
Okay, don't be nervous. The game is Taylor Swift or Shakespeare.
Okay.
So I'm going to read you a quote, and it's either going to be from Taylor Swift or Shakespeare.
Got you.
You got to guess, okay? Why then can one desire too much of a good thing?
I'm going to Taylor Swift.
Shakespeare.
Oh.
Yeah.
I studied English as well. This is so poor. Up to a stinker. Let's
You
go.
have to block your lecturers from this video. Lord, what will become of me once I've lost my novelty?
Taylor Swift.
Ding. Do you know what song? I'll give you
No,
a
I don't
bonus
know what
point.
song.
Nothing new.
Okay.
I know that off the top of my head as well. I didn't write that down. We know what we are, but know not what we may be.
Shakespeare.
That's Shakespeare. Yeah. Your faithless love is the only hoax I believe in.
Taylor Swift.
That's Taylor Swift. Yeah. From the best-selling album of the year, nominated by the Grammys, Folklore, which you said earlier.
That
was
is
the first
that-
Taylor Swift album you listened to.
That I listened to properly. So therefore, my favourite Taylor Swift album. Yeah.
Such a phenomenal album. Do you have a favourite song from that album?
Is Exile with Bon Iver on that?
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. That was my surprise song at the show.
Really?
Yeah.
Sensational. Yeah.
It was
yeah.
phenomenal. Next one. Clover blooms in the fields. Spring breaks loose. The time is near.
Shakespeare.
Taylor Swift.
So Shakespearean.
Go on, Taylor. I pray you do not fall in love with me.
Shakespeare.
What's done can't be undone.
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare, yep. Do you miss the rogue who coaxed you into paradise and left you there?
Taylor Swift.
That's Taylor Swift, yeah. It's from Coney Island, that one. I hate it here, so I will go to secret gardens in my mind.
Taylor Swift.
That's Taylor Swift. The rob that smiles steals something from the thief.
Shakespeare.
That's Shakespeare. Yeah, you're doing well.
Thank you.
Past the curses and the cries, beyond the terror in the nightfall.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, that's Taylor Swift. You're getting better as we go along. My tongue will tell the anger of my heart, or else my heart concealing it will break.
Brilliant, whoever it is. But I believe it to be Shakespeare.
It is Shakespeare, yep. Final one. I'd meet you where the spirit meets the bones in a faith-forgotten land.
Oh, Shakespeare.
Taylor Swift.
Fair enough.
Yeah. That is from Ivy on the Evermore. If you listen to Evermore as a
Yes,
whole,
yeah.
that's from Ivy on Evermore.
Okay.
Evermore, I cannot.
No, let's get into it.
Okay, let's get into it. Folklore is a better album
Okay.
as a cohesive project. Evermore has got better songs than Folklore. The songs on their own are stronger, but Folklore as a project as a whole is stronger.
I completely understand that. I completely understand that. I would take that. I would take that. Yeah, I would.
Yeah,
I would.
It's nice to get a professional poet opinion on this.
The reason Folklore drew my attention in the first place is because Aaron Dessner was a big part of it, and I loved The National.
He's a fantastic producer as well.
Amazing producer.
Yeah.
And Bon Iver were on it, who are, love Bon Iver, which opened the door to the wonderful writing of Taylor Swift, rival only to Shakespeare. And and yeah, I those two albums are the ones that I really like, but I really agree with what you just said. I really do. Yeah.
The two albums.
Yeah.
I think because as well, like I think what I find so interesting about it is they released in lockdown. So that was probably at a time where we were probably the most self-reflective.
Yes.
And that for me, like for her to go into I went into lockdown and had a breakdown. She went into lockdown and produced two of the best albums she's ever made. And I'm just like, okay, damn. Because I think they were really like shocking points in her career, because a load of people who'd never listened to Taylor before thought she just wrote like good pop music, which she does. Listened to that and then went, oh, she can write. She can really write. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it, when we're forced into those times of it was a hard time for everyone around the world, and times of self-reflection like turn to those times of like poetry.
I mean, this again returns to my point of creation, hope, joy, all of those things. They're not fanciful things. Like when we are in our deepest hours of need, those are the things that we turn to.
Absolutely. Well, David, I have one final question for you.
Go for it.
I don't know if you prepared an answer to this, so I'm interested in what you're going to say.
Okay.
And that is, how are you chasing joy this week?
How am I chasing joy this week?
Yeah.
I am resting as much as I need to. I usually don't really like afternoon naps specifically because they make me feel confused for the first like 10, 20 minutes. Like, we wake up, what century is this? Is this Taylor Swift or Shakespeare?
I get what you mean, but the way you said it just felt like a grandpa. I wake up confused. I'm like, who's the Prime Minister?
But that's how it makes me feel. It makes me feel super disoriented. But at the moment, especially with the book coming out, my schedule's been really, really busy. I've been doing loads of stuff outside what I'd like to keep as my usual working hours.
Yeah.
And I'm just well aware, especially after like having health challenges last year, I'm very aware of my need to take care of myself. So I'm really practicing the lessons that I learned last year and resting as much as I need to, and letting things that I feel like doing right now, letting them wait for later, because I trust myself to take care of them later and need myself to take care of myself now. So chasing joy this week looks like letting myself rest when I need to.
Do you know what? I think you'll really appreciate as well. There is only one person who has come on this podcast and not said resting is my joy this week.
Really?
Every other person has said, I'm going to bolt the doors at the weekend, have a weekend to myself and just rest and do nothing. The only person who came on here and said, oh, no, my joy this weekend is I'm going to go to this like electronic gig and I'm going to go on a night out was my dad. Every other person who's in like their 20s or 30s, it's like, yeah, I'm going to rest. My dad, who is like in his mid-50s, it's like, no, I'm going to go out, I'm going to go rave. But yeah, so it feels like a consistent theme that we all need to rest more and we're all choosing rest more. And it's a productive part of life. It's necessary.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here, David.
Thank you for this has been a delight.
love this conversation. I've wanted you on the podcast for so long, so thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.